Meltdown. Get excited, get really fired up. But maybe one of the most memorable happened March 11th of this year at a Chrysler plant, the Mack plant, not too far from Detroit, down in that general area. It happened to a young man by the name of Jerry Wayne. He was asking the former vice president about gun rights and whether or not guns would be taken away from people. And Biden had just a massive meltdown that thrust Jerry into the spotlight on social media. It went viral, went everywhere. Now there's a chance he might speak at the Republican National Convention. He's in Belleville this morning, Belleville, Michigan, not too far from where I am, in fact. Jerry, welcome to the Steve Gruber Show.
And thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey, good to have you here. All right, so I don't know if you were an accidental tourist or if you wanted to provoke Joe Biden, but you asked important questions about the Second Amendment. You put him on the spot. You pressed him. Man, he didn't like it a bit, did he?
No, not at all. He was wanting to go through there and just wave his hand and stuff and say, hey, I like these union guys, and just walk on through. But I don't think he was really expecting a question.
And let me ask you something, because it's always been perplexing to me. I grew up in a town that at the time that I joined the planet, there were 7 General Motors plants. So I grew up in Michigan, and you're in Michigan, obviously. And it always perplexed me how union guys working at the different auto plants and so forth, would support Democrats blindly when it seemed to me the guys that I would see from GM and Chrysler and Ford would be guys that would like to hunt and fish and, take their families up north for the weekend and, guys that embraced the Second Amendment, but they always voted for Democrats. And to me, it was always odd. I never quite understood it. Why was that? Why is that? Why this allegiance to Democrats when it seems to me Democrats don't hold the same worldview as folks like yourself?
I'm actually very glad you asked that. You're actually the first person to ask me such a question. I know exactly why that is. And that's because what we do as union men and women, we are very family-oriented. And what we like to do is we like to go to work and work as much as we possibly can so we can provide for our family. And a lot of our time throughout the day is taken to provide for our families. And when we do go home, we like to enjoy our families. And we're not very politically involved. And so what we do is we expect our representatives of our union to do that research for us and to speak back to us about what's actually happening. And then we pretty much follow them and say, hey, this is what the best move is for our union and for our livelihood. And recently our representatives are not doing the correct thing.
Well, I think that for many years, I think it's not just recently, I think it's for a number of years now, the union bosses, the union leaders would say, vote for these Democrats, and the rank and file would go along for the ride, but not so much anymore. I see police unions, most notably right now, jumping ship from the Democrats, joining Donald Trump. That's obvious why. The president being a guy who endorses law and order. But what do you hear inside the shop where you work? Do you think that there's a lot more of the union members that are going for Trump? Because I believe that's what happened in part in Michigan, in Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania in 2016. They said, you know what, we've had enough of the Democrats. They don't represent who we are. Leadership can say what they want, but when I'm in the voting booth, I'll do as I need. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's actually what happened with me speaking to Joe Biden on March 11th. That really stirred up a big pot amongst the union men throughout the entire nation. And when you go to work now and work in these plants, a lot of people were always very quiet, hush about it, and they don't want to talk politics because you don't want to fight a guy on the job, And then people get
right.
very adamant about what they believe in on the job. But now it's more like, hey, they come up to me like I'm a celebrity, hey, you're that guy that blah, blah, blah. And I got to be honest with you, about 100% of people, I think, about 100% are for what I did with Joe Biden and how I held myself and what stature I held there. Do I think that they're going to be out and going to vote Trump and all that stuff? I'm not too sure. I don't really ask them about that, but I know they're definitely not for Biden. So maybe Kanye West, who knows? But definitely not for Biden.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe they're Kanye West supporters. Maybe you're right. Jerry Wayne here, a guy who found himself thrust into the spotlight back in March because he was asking a pretty tough question to the Vice President Joe Biden, and Joe Biden just got nasty. He was condescending, honestly, and rude and foul. You were right there. You must have seen a switch go off when you're standing that close to somebody. You see them lose their temper. You had to have seen that right up close.
Yeah, so I could actually see in his eyes already that he was going to say, you're full of, whatever word he said. And you could tell he was waiting for me to get finished, and that's what he was going to say right off the back. I believe that what he was wanting to do is wanting to be like that blue-collar guy amongst everybody else, because he knew the crowd was for him at that point. Nobody was for me in that entire area. And he wanted to use that to his advantage, but he ended up digging himself a hole. And I knew where this conversation was going, and so I wanted to give him the opportunity to dig that hole. So I kind of just let him keep going with that. And this is where it took me. So it gave me a voice now, and I have Joe Biden to thank for that.
Well, I think it's important that you use that voice, because I think in America in 2020, we have something on the order of 22 million new guns have been sold year to date. 40% of those gun purchases are from first-time gun buyers. More than half of those folks are women. So you're looking at a new dynamic. Women are buying guns at a faster clip than they ever have before. You have new gun buyers getting involved with the right to defend themselves or their neighborhood. I don't think what's happening in Kenosha, Wisconsin would happen in a number of neighborhoods that I'm familiar with. And not because anybody would shoot back, but it reminds me of what happened in 1995 during the riots, and they would just stand guard and say, no, you're not burning this building. Move along. And that's a part of what the Second Amendment is about, defending your life, your property, everything. And that's why I think that union members across this country, like yourself, are going to break hard for Donald Trump, harder than they did in 2016. He was an unknown quantity then. Do you think it's fair to say the president's fighting for jobs in America, pushing back against China, trying to make better trade deals that benefit you and other union members?
Absolutely. And I'd like to speak on that, if you don't mind. Back when we had Barack Obama as president, we had to take pay cuts to and we also had to bail out 2 out of the big 3. And by the big 3, I mean the General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler. And 2 of those took a bailout, and we had to take 10% pay cuts to do that. And now with Donald Trump here, when he was doing his campaign, he spoke in front of the CEOs of Ford and GM and said, hey, if you don't bring your work back here, then we're going to put tariffs, on your stuff here. And we got to look at what we're doing now. I just got off of work. I'm working 7/10s right now, and so is everybody else. Throughout the entire nation, we are working nonstop. We also have to deal with the virus going around and stuff, but everybody's out here and we want to work and we have the work. So if you want to come in here as a presidential candidate like Joe Biden does, and he wants to get our vote, I don't see how you're going to do that. How are you going to make that better? I tried to ask him that as well, and he went right over that question, but I don't see how he's going to do that. Like, we always have room for improvement, but I just don't see it. He keeps saying all these generic things, like in the DNC, he has a generic message after generic message, and there's no real concrete plan here. So I don't see how he's going to make a change.
Jerry Wayne, greatly appreciate you being here. Jerry Wayne, well, God bless you. You're a good American. I'll just tell you that. And I appreciate that, because you stood up when nobody in the room was on your side. You were the minority viewpoint, and you were able to ask your question, one that meant something to you. And Jerry, we might see you at the RNC this week. We'll look forward to that. But thank you so much for stopping by and being here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And if anybody would like to follow me on my journey, I'm on social media at Jerry Wayne AR14. And that's on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So I appreciate you having me.
There you go. Jerry, thank you so much. Well done. Back in a moment on the No Panic Zone.